This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are stemmed. Stay with us. Obo Bakala, welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me.
Bakala Garba is a prominent political leader who devoted his entire life combating for what he believes in. I know that he's also a lifetime educator and academician. For more, he is highly balanced and unwavering politician. Currently, he is the first deputy chairman of the Oromo Federalist Congress Party. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Okay, personally, I know that you have been going through ups and downs, imprisonments for a number of times, and throughout your life, you have gone through turbulences. From this, what do you learn personally, and perhaps what we can learn from your experience, or maybe the new generation can learn from your commitment?
Right, thank you. In fact, every experience in life teaches us many things, and the things I've gone through in my life have taught me much. And I think it built up my confidence in facing everything, every eventuality. Whatever problems I may face, I'm always prepared for that. And above all, it taught me to say no to injustice and to inequality. And like I said, I am able to live through all inconveniences. I can go hungry, I can go thirsty, I can sleep anywhere. I'm used to every kind of weather, and this will give me the confidence to fight through and to push for the ideal I stood for and what I believe in. So this is what I can say about myself. But what other people can learn from me, really, I don't know. People learn from individuals, from groups, from parties, from various parts of politicians. In fact, they learn many things. And just very few things about, for example, in the last hunger strike we went through, I think many people can learn many things from it, because people are warned, or they usually worry about their livelihood and what to live on if they run into conflict with the government, or if they don't earn anything, what they eat, how they live. People really bother about these things, and they bow to pressure many of the times. But we have seen and we have shown practically that it is possible to live on very meager resource, and you can go hungry without dying for several days. We actually stayed 39 days without food, and that shows it's possible at least to live once in a while and to continue struggling for what one believes in. So I think people should not worry, and this is actually the resource, the food that we eat, for which we sell our brothers, and the cause we stood for, and to bow for pressures, and afraid of the government, and setting back from struggle many of the time. So I think our life, not only mine, but the lives of many people who have undergone such kind of difficulties, can teach the new generation to be self-contained and to be self-restraining, meaning to have control over oneself and then to live in very few or very little meager resource that is possible. I think this is one of the things that the new generation can learn from us.
That's really remarkable and huge commitment. And maybe my next question is, after being released from a long drawn-out prison, you guys managed to come to America and some other countries, and you were in position to say thank you for people living abroad. And I would like to ask you, how was the feeling in that regard? I mean, after going through tough times, like you said, 39 days or 14 days hunger strike, you managed to get out of there, and then you say thank you for people who stood by you.
Right in the prison, we knew that the level of sympathy people have for us, the level of love they have for us, and not only for us but for the entire Oromo struggle. We have seen that level was so high, and it was not only ourselves or not only us who suffered during the hunger strike and during our stay in prison, but the entire Oromo population around the world, here in the diaspora and in the country in Ethiopia, have undergone misery, we can say. They spent so many sleepless nights. They paid a lot. Many of them were not actually eating, so they suffered a lot, we know. So we wanted to say thank you for our people. So we had three objectives when we set out to for the Galatoma tour. The first one was, just like I said, to say thank you. So we did that. We appeared in several places, and we got our people personally, physically, and that was, we can say that was one of the achievements, and one of the objectives is successfully met. The second one was to listen to what our people would say, and we have listened adequately in every stage. There were so many questions that were raised, so many complaints that were forwarded, and there were so many unsatisfactions that were directed towards us in the way we were going. So we were able to listen to what people say and think, and what people would like to be, and how people would like Oromia to see in the future. So that's also successfully met. And the third one was to explain what the objective reality looks like in Oromia and in Ethiopia. We tried to explain in our own ways, and in that regard, there are some people who were satisfied. There were others who were not satisfied. The way we assess, and I think we need to go back and then assess with the party how successful it was generally. But depending on the basic two objectives I just mentioned now, we were very successful in that, but I doubt very much whether we succeeded on the third one, and that will be reviewed by the party, and then we'll take into account what people said and how people think, and what the future direction of the party will be in the future.
Yeah, as you said, there were appreciations, reflections, comments, questions, and points of concerns. I think that could have been a homework for you guys. And let me take you to the other side of our discussion. As an Oromo, we have been struggling all through, in spite of some achievements. The Oromos could not able to get what it needs, and still the Oromo is struggling, and a number of people refer to the 1974, 1991, and 2018 happenings. They call it a lost opportunity. Why is that? Is there any reason for that loss of opportunity, or how do you see that?
Well, the Oromo have started struggling since their enslavement at the beginning of the 19th century. In various places there have been revolts, there have been struggles, there have been uprisings against the regimes. In 1974, in fact, there was a huge student protests beginning from universities and high schools, and then taken over by the taxi drivers in Addis Ababa. And then it was complemented with all walks of life from the entire population, and then brought about the 1974 revolution. During that revolution, there was the only body that was organized as an institution was the military. So it was taken up by the military, and then it fell into the hands of the military. However, there were some achievements during that time. At least some slogans like land to the tillers were realized, and there was a proclamation that provided land to the tillers. Somehow the feudal system was over, and though not enough, it was a beginning, and many Oromos were able at least to be free from the yoke of feudalism and from serfdom. That was at least one achievement. And in the 1991, also Oromo at that moment had organization. There was OLF and was fighting with other parties. There were 17 or so parties that were fighting against the regime. And finally it brought down that regime, and there was a change of government. In that process also, the better prepared and the better organized parties or organizations took over the power, and for the second time the Oromos were pushed out from the political system, we can say. But yet still there were certain things that Oromo benefited out of it. For example, the region known as Oromia was established, at least, and then
a new constitution.
Yeah, a new constitution was written. And then discussion was made, some kind of discussions or debates were made on somehow.
Yeah, even the question of nations and nationalities.
Yeah, the question of nations and nationalities, the use of languages, using one's own language in school and at workplaces was constitutionally enshrined. So that was one step forward, at least. Though not enough, but the basic foundation where there were at least recognition of the rights of nations and nationalities was enshrined in the constitution, and that was really an achievement by itself. But towards the end, it was, the EPRDF went out of its way. The greed for money and also the lust for power, everything destroyed. And then the grip on the Oromos and other nations and nationalities was so heavy, to the extent that the people had to rebel against the system. and the Oromos, especially because of the Addis Ababa master plan from 2014 to 2018, the Oromo movement, the Oromo protest was in its peak. So by that time it was difficult for the government to continue the way it used to rule, and the people refused to be ruled in the old way, and the regime, if not regime change, some kind of reform was so important and necessary. They were pushed out. The EPRDF, especially the ruling party, the main party in the EPRDF, the TPLF, was removed from power, and another power struggle continued. There was a reshuffle. As far as the parties were concerned, the OPDO came into power in 2018.
Before that, we'll come to the 2018. The 1991 movement, transition, was it a kind of departure from the old existing system? Because that new constitution was about nations and nationalities, about language, about democracy, what have you. The problem with that constitution was it was not implemented.
True.
And entirely after that constitution, one group has to take power, and the fate of the Oromos were, as usual, imprisonment, killings, and what have you. Have gone through that. Was it a departure from the old system, but a kind of attempt not implemented, or how do you describe that before going to the 2018?
Yeah, in fact, it was. Both the 1974 revolution and the 1991 was basically regime changes. That was from the transition from feudal to socialist.
Oriented system.
Yeah, oriented system. And this one was the main, the system was based on giving recognition to the rights of nations and nationalities, and a new constitution was drafted and put in place, ratified later on, and then it was, I think the constitution is still in place now. So the basic principles that were included in the constitution are basically very good. I can say it's one of the best constitutions, in fact, but like you said, the main problem is it has never been put into practice. It has never been implemented. Only a fraction that the TPLF thought would be helpful to the group was put into effect. The others, for example, the idea of special rights of Oromia over Addis Ababa, all these things were not raised at all throughout the 27 years of APRDF regime. So, but this one, the 2018 is not a regime change, because it is the same party that is still in power. It is still EPRDF, and then we see all the people around that were in the party right from the very beginning. They are still in the helm of the government. They are still the ruling party and the ruling class. So it was a kind of reform. It was an attempt to democratize. And then the mandate that was given to that group was to democratize, but they backpedaled. They broke their promises and failed to lead into transition or to democratize the country, the politics, and then finally we ended up in the place where we are now.
Yeah, okay, that's the point I want to capitalize on. As you said, during what happened during 27 years was resulted in, some call it mass movement, the others call youth movement from 2014 to 2018. There were hopes and promises. In fact, some of the things like releasing prisoners, allowing a platform for different medias, and calling back opposition parties to back into the country. These were some of the symbolic changes. Actually, I don't call it change, but a kind of environment of change was created. There were promises and hopes, particularly for democracy, accountability, the rule of law, what have you. But those promises were turned down. What is the reason in your evaluation? What was the reason? I personally believe that that chance was hijacked by those who really advocate the old days, the golden days they call it, and who believed in one culture, one language, one nation, and so on. I personally believe that it was hijacked by that camp. What's your reflection on that? Is it because of that, or because of leadership, or what?
Yeah, there are so many factors in play. Like we said, the 2014 to 28 was the height of the Oromo protests, in which the Oromo youth, the Kero, have sacrificed their lives and whatever they have, and were really at the brink of getting rid of the regime altogether. But it was thought that, especially from the Western, there was a huge pressure that changing the regime as it is and doing away with destroying all the institutions as it used to be, the characteristics of other revolutions, might result in great disaster and disintegration of the country. So it was thought that using the reformist group within the party, because some groups were created within the EPRDF ruling party towards the end of the Oromo protest. When they understand that they can no longer go in the way they used to go, they took side with the Oromo protest, and then they took the media also with themselves. Really, they contributed a lot to the change. So the idea was just taking this group as a core and then reforming, just keeping the institutions as it is, and then reforming and democratizing the political system. That was the idea. So there was a general consensus about this. So the change took place. One thing that was thought about was, because it is spearheaded by the Oromo youth, someone from the Oromo can bring about some kind of peace to the country. So whoever he may be, but the next prime minister, the next leader must be an Oromo. This was the general understanding that was within the Western and within the Western camp, especially Americans, the European Union, and the like. So luckily, I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, Dr. Abiy was selected as a leader, and then he gripped the power. There was a team actually known as the Team Lemma, and one of whom was Dr. Abiy, the current Prime Minister himself.
Sure.
And from Amara groups also, there was some kind of coalition and understanding among the Oromos and the Amaras against the TPLF by then. So when Dr. Abiy came to power, and when that Team Lemma is at the helm of the power, what happened was there was some kind of division and contradiction amongst themselves how the future of the country should be. one thing the current prime minister did right after he has taken power was he invited the political parties who were outlawed and legalized them, released all the political prisoners, struck deal with Eritrea, and then he was forced to form his own cabinets, just getting rid of the ones he thought would challenge him and would be his rivals, and then he introduced novice ones, new ones, and usually who are dependent on his patronage. So, and mainly women, not mainly, but 50 or 40 something
yes.
percent women.
Yeah.
So that kind of the cabinet, this type of cabinet was immediately formed, and this gave him the chance to get rid of the others who would challenge him in the future. And on top of that, the US was quick to give legitimacy. In fact, from the internal legitimacy, it was the external legitimacy that was greater that was given to the prime minister. All this, some of the measures he has taken were taken for granted, and they say that he is pro-American and he's anti-Chinese. He's a Protestant. He's a young man. Therefore, they put all the trust on him and started supporting him. In fact, they provided a blanket support. And this was followed by United Arab Emirates and the European Union, and using that, the prime minister consolidated his power. Now he got rid of the old cabinet, and then the old the division between the team Lemma now became greater and greater. He did away with them. In fact, he got rid of them. And in the meantime, there were so many things that were orchestrated, like, for example, the throwing of the hand grenade on the prime minister in the rally in which the prime minister took part. A hand grenade was thrown, and then later also in that same year, the great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam director was assassinated, and then the chief of the army, the chief of staff of the Ethiopian army was assassinated. He was killed, and then the Amara president was killed along with his colleagues, and all these were shown, or they were, the Americans and the other donors saw this as this is a fight between the new prime minister, who is a pro-American, and the old guard. They say that this is a sabotage of the old guard. So they started supporting. He got a lot of support. In fact, the United Arab Emirates supported personally a huge amount of money so that he can establish the Republican Army that is only accountable to, not to the army, not to anybody, but to the prime minister himself. That was what happened. And then the prime minister consolidated his power. He got stronger and stronger, because they say that it's a fight. Whatever the prime minister does is correct for the Europeans and for the Americans at face value, and the other, what is happening in the country, whatever chaos is being created, is the sabotage of the old guard, mainly the TPLF. It was considered like that. So to come to your point, in the meantime, within the parties also, like, there were two conflicting and contradictory ideas as to the future of the country in the ruling party. In Team Lemma itself, there was contradictory idea within the parties as well. There were some parties who came to the country thinking that this is the right time now to to go back and to revive the old history, the old civilization, and then the old glory of old Ethiopia. So the flag, about the flag, just brandishing the old flag has now started, and then so many conflicts everywhere, and then put the blame on the constitution. You know, they want to get rid of, there is a group that want to get rid of the constitution, and then want the old flag, and then the Ethiopian unity, speaking one language, dancing to one music, eating the same food, and having the same ideology and culture, religion, and the like. On the other hand, there were other federalist groups that say, no, we are diverse people, we have our own culture, we have our own language, we want to develop it, we want to cultivate it, and we want to do the constitution in place. So, you know, when every conflict happens in the country, those groups, the unitarist group, they put the blame on the other group and on the constitution. Look, this is because of ethnic federalism that is endorsed by the constitution. So they say that this constitution must be torn and thrown away, and the others say, no, this constitution is our guarantee. There are certain things that we need to amend, but we cannot throw it away. So this is a conflict. If you remember the incident in Burayu, that was it was orchestrated that way. You know, people were celebrating in Mescal Square here the coming of the OLF, and massacre is taking place in Burayu. Some people were with their shields and everything, with their swords and everything there, and then a lot of mess has been created, and they say that they put the blame on Keros still, and so many were sent to prison. And suddenly the Prime Minister took side with that group that needs the unitarist kind of governance. And in his book Madamar, in fact, Madamar does preach homogenization, just bringing everything, boiling everything to one, just reflecting oneness and sameness, nothing else, no diversity. So it's because of that. After that, there was a huge crackdown on the ethnic-based parties. Their offices were closed, and then war was waged against, the prime target being the Oromo parties, mainly the OLF. So war broke out. You know, some part of Oromia was shut from the world. The internet was cut. There was no communication at all. Command post was imposed, and then a lot of atrocities took place in that part of the country.
Then war was started, and actually it was started in Wallagga and Gujizen to Tigray, and now to Oromia, and as a continuation of our discussion, and that war, crisis, and turbulences are now beyond control in that nation.
True.
As a nation in Ethiopia and in Oromia in particular. I believe that in my observation, the country is heading to the wrong direction. So, as an experienced politician, where are we now as a nation, or as Oromia, and where are we heading really? Because I think things are getting out of control in terms of politics, in terms of economy, in terms of diplomacy, being aggravated by drought, famine, inflation, the kind of corruption which is almost incurable. And how do you see this? Where are we now, the reality, and where are we heading as a nation?
Well, we raised about the 1974 change, where we raised about the 1991 change, in which there was a complete change breakdown of the old regime, the old system, the old institutions, and replacing by a new one. This time is it's a different one. But each time there was a change, there was some kind of advantage that the people got. But in this 2018, I think we are growing worse than we have been ever. I can say. Because I cannot mention anything that the Oromos got from the change that took place, the so-called change that took place in 2018. I have nothing to mention about that. And what I can say is the situation we are in is, the houses of poor farmers are being burnt, people are being burnt alive, and then extrajudicial killing is very much widespread, and then imprisonment is at this peak. And I think the local people are more impoverished than they were. There were very few people, in fact, who are building houses and tall buildings in Addis Ababa and other places, but the great majority or the grassroots has come to the point where it cannot feed itself. Years back, really we don't see people as such going hungry. They can be categorized as poor people living in the countryside, but yet people have something to live on. People had something to eat. But today, that has become, just getting one meal a day has become a luxury now. And we witness in Finfinne itself that people were not able to feed their children and send them to school, and the school has started feeding the children. But the main question that needs to be asked is, what is happening to the parents? The parents who have nothing to feed their children, do they have anything to feed themselves? And in many parts of Oromia and the entire country, farmers are not plowing because of insecurity. There is a command post nearly in almost all Oromia, we can say now. War is fighting is going on everywhere. Tigray is now how many years since it stopped producing anything. The Amara region is also very much affected. So the most productive areas are not producing. So there is food shortage now, and the international community has now opened its eyes and started saying we are being deceived. We are being deceived, and what we are being told was a lie, and we can never support the government any longer. Therefore, money is not coming. Exporters have dwindled. Import has raised, and the cost of living has skyrocketed. And like I said at the beginning of the reform, the so-called reform, there was much money, especially from the United Arab Emirates, that were being pumped here. Therefore, the ones who came from the diaspora who joined the government were spending money, earning money as they like. But now that is no longer there, and because of that, they have to indulge themselves in corruption. They have to sell the land, and they are engaged in any evil sorts of corruption now. So corruption has become the rule of the day, and there is no way in which these people can survive without corruption. No production is going on because of the security, and then there is no export, and as well there is no foreign direct investment now because of the security again. So in many ways things are getting worse, not better. So where are we heading is this one. We are the country is on the brink of total collapse. It is a miracle it has existed to date, but I don't know if things continue and something does not happen, the government does not take some measures, that will be very difficult, and that will be maybe leading to the total collapse of the country, as I think.
Maybe beyond control.
Yeah.
I think the other part of it is the Oromia government invited different groups to launch war in Oromia, and perhaps personally I feel that that's like adding fuel on a burning fire. That's again a problem in that nation. As you said, issues of corruption, inflation, drought is getting really rough to the people. Let me take you to the other side of our discussion, which is perhaps the gist of our discussion. Personally, I feel that given the behavior of the ruling party or the government in general, the possibility of peaceful struggle, the non-violent one, is a challenge for me. I don't see that possibility open, because the government or the ruling party tends to close all the doors for peaceful struggle. I know that you are one of the promoters and lifetime advocate of peaceful struggle, non-violence, and that did work from the youth movement 2014 to 2018. It was successful, and I believe that it can work in one way or the other way. But the problem is, if the government or the ruling party closed the door for peaceful struggle, I see two things. One, those who advocate peaceful struggle, I mean you guys who advocate peaceful struggle, should create pressure on the government so that the government will open the door for peaceful struggle. And the second step is to exercise strategies of a peaceful struggle. Peaceful struggle is not just silence. Silence is one of it, but it may require, mobilizing the mass, asking questions, challenging the government, creating pressure on the government so that the government will be forced to change its strategies and the way it is going on. So my question is, as a lifetime advocate or as a leader of the Oromo Federalist Congress, which promotes peaceful struggle, how do you see the possibility of peaceful struggle in that nation, the hope, the power of peaceful struggle? Would it be something that can be realized, or how do you see that?
Well, I think it's common knowledge that resolving problems, resolving conflicts peacefully is less expensive and less risky, less life and resource consuming than the violent one. This is common knowledge. Everybody understands that peace prevails over violence. But this depends upon the nature of the governments. Like you said, the nature of this government, the Ethiopian government, is so different. Is it peace-loving? Does it understand what democracy is? Does it encourage peaceful struggle or non-violent struggle is the question. The government doesn't care about peace. This is because we can cite so many evidences for that. There was a time when the government and OLF reached an agreement to disarm the OLF fighters and integrate into the society, meaning bringing them and then reorienting and then integrating into the army, the Oromia police or the Oromia special force, or integrate into the society by providing whatever they need to start their livelihood again. But this was not realized because of the unwillingness on the part of the government. We were part of it, and partly we were deceived by believing that these people were honest. At the beginning, every one of us trusted, actually, because we took for granted that this group is trustworthy group. But later we found out really it didn't take us much time to understand that we were wrong and it's not true. So we understood that this government is not after peace. That is not the peace loving. That was one indication. It didn't help. The government refused. Even we were denied the right to visit those people whom we brought from where they were in the jungle, who were fighting for their own right. In fact, they were right. But another one is, for example, when we were in prison, we went on hunger strike for 39 days. I remember going on hunger strike for 9 days. The second time I was arrested, I was in prison during the TPLF regime. And every time, every day, they come and they ask about our demand, and they meet some of our demands in order to get us eat food. But this government, for 39 days, didn't ask us one single day. Didn't come and say what happened and what is going on. They were mocking. They were saying that they are eating something else, and it is not true that they are starving.
Yeah.
You know, but so actually, hunger strike is one of the strategies of nonviolent struggle. So your government, a responsible government, must ask the demand of people who go on hunger strike. What's the problem and how can it be solved? But let alone responding to our demand, they have never asked us for 39 days. Look at that. So this government never believes in peaceful struggle. The only thing they understand is warfare. That is what they understand, only the language of the gun. They don't want. So I can say we still believe that it is good if every political conflict is resolved peacefully. Because we have been warning as a party, for example, before the war broke out with Tigray.
Yeah.
This doesn't take us anywhere, doesn't take the country anywhere. It's better to resolve it peacefully. After all those loss of life and property and resource, now they are going to sit down and discuss. So we still push. We still say that resolving conflicts by non-violent means, peaceful means, is the best choice. But if the government does not listen to this, like the saying goes, any government or any group that makes peaceful struggle impossible will make the violent struggle inevitable, because people have the right to fight for their right, because this is a naturally gifted right of everybody, every individual, every person.
I think that's why the youth, I mean, those people, young people were part of the youth movement pushed out, and now they joined the armed struggle.
Exactly, that's the point. Because they were left with no choice at all. The government is not listening to them. Is not going to meet their demand. No, let alone meeting, doesn't want to listen. So
but now
the only option
my
they
question
have is they have to join the jungle. They have to fight. This is a defensive fight. This is not offensive one. This is not rebellion. This is not rebellion, by the way. This is not rebellion. This is a fight for right for existence in your own country, in your own land. If someone doesn't listen to you peacefully, you have to make him listen in the language he understands. That is what the government wants to listen to. Because now, look at that. He wants to negotiate. The government wants to negotiate with the TPLF now. But says, on the other hand, no, I am not going to listen to the OLA. Because they told, the TPLF told him in the language he can understand. Therefore, it is encouraging. It is encouraging peace, non-violent struggle, armed struggle. You fight, you kill, and then we'll listen to you. Otherwise, we don't listen to you. That is what it means. So people are fighting for their own right. They are not rebels. You know, they are defending their naturally given right. They were peaceful people in the party, at school, at workplace, at offices yesterday, like I and you, but they were forced to join the jungle because they were not able to live in their own place, in their own country. The only thing they are left with is to go and fight to the last ditches. That's it. So I think we'd say again, it's better to listen before it is too late again. The negotiations that is planned or maybe going on with the TPLF must go on with the OLA, the Oromo Liberation Army as well.
We'll be coming to that. And in fact, my question is, you guys, as OFC, do you have a strategy to create pressure on the government so that they can allow or open the door for peaceful struggle?
One of the strategies is what I and you are doing now. We are telling, and in every mechanism we have, we are telling that this is not taking us anywhere, and we are appealing to international community and the donor community as well, that are providing them with diplomatic and financial resources, assistance. We are appealing to them that it is not taking this country anywhere. I have to sit down, and this is what OFC was doing and what OFC will do in the future. But we don't think that this is the only way. This is not the only way, because when people are left with with no choices, they will take the only choice they have, and this is what they are taking now.
Great. Quite a number of people were advising the government and other actors for a national dialogue. And in fact, OFC was claiming for that since long. And recently the government also initiated some kind of interest, I would say, to a national dialogue, but it was challenged from the very scratch, because the approach was like the government dominating everything to put in place that national dialogue from the very start. And as you said, there was a tendency of talking to some group like TDF, but ignoring to talk to, for instance, the OLA and other groups. This is again a challenge. Now, recently, at current time, even that initiative is now under question, because they are not going to it, because there are a number of misunderstandings. From what I see yesterday and before yesterday, there were claims, you see, that national dialogues perhaps could not happen in reality. In general terms, the only solution to the problem is not a military solution. Obviously, it's a political solution. From your side, as an experienced politician, what do you advise? Do you still advise for a national dialogue whereby all actors involved in it, I mean, a kind of all-inclusive, participatory type, perhaps independent, a national dialogue that fulfills, by any means, a international standard? Are you for that, or do you have any tangible strategy that could be suggested for solving the current crisis of that nation?
Well, I think we don't have now, at the moment, we don't have the luxury of sitting back and discussing about the strategies now. The country is on the brink of collapse, like we said. It's on the cliff. Now, what needs to do is, it's very clear for anybody now. This country cannot carry on, or cannot go on, cannot tolerate war now. It is not possible now. The economy doesn't allow, and I think there is nothing that allows war as a means of resolving a problem of this country now. So the point you raised is about the inclusiveness is yes. I don't know why the double standard here. The OLA and the TPLF, TDA were categorized as they were by the parliament declared that they are outlawed. They are terrorist groups. Okay, that time they were not two. They were not one. They were two. TPLF and OLA, two parties. Now talking to one and not talking to the other. What does it mean? What does it mean? Now it says, if I talk to the TPLF, well, there is no need to talk to the OLA. Okay, if it is like that, why was the mention to declare OLA as a terrorist group then? Yeah, labeling TPLF would have been enough. So there are two parties, two warring groups, two groups in conflict with the government. Not only two, but there are several of them now. All these groups must come and they must discuss. They must resolve by agreeing at ceasefire, on ceasefire first. The guns must fall silent now. Now we are not able to carry any war hereafter. That country cannot.
And the humanitarian crisis is also there.
Humanitarian crisis, the level of displacement, hunger, drought, and then also the COVID, all sorts of problems are in that country. So the country cannot afford war now. So a responsible government does that, and we are calling for that again. If this is not going to happen, well, who is to blame if the country falls apart and if things go worse? Obviously, as it seems is going to be, it is only the government and people personally, at the leadership of this country, are personally responsible as war criminals in the future. Historically, they will be asked, they will one day or the other, they will appear in front of court for just pulling this country into a war. And I think the international community has understood this, and they are making a lot of pressure. Whether the government does accept that pressure is something we will see in the future. So we always say that negotiation is so important, and
the problem is apprehensions of war seems to be high on the agenda of both sides, for instance, between TDF and the government. On top of that, I see the involvement of different actors aggravating the situation here and there. For instance, look at Eritrea, Sudan, Somali, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and even other big powers of the world. Would it be really a kind of the government, I think, is not in a position to sit down for genuine national dialogue because of these influences? Do you see that creating some turbulence over there? I mean, the involvement of different actors.
Well, I think the government, I hope, is not going to commit the same mistake it committed when it went to war with Tigray the first time. That time the idea was just get prepared and destroy the TDF altogether within a couple of days or within a couple of weeks. And then even they got the green light from the Americans because they thought that will be possible and the war will end very soon and the army will be back for Christmas. That is what they thought, but it didn't happen. Yeah, mind you, this is not only the Ethiopian army. The Ethiopian army plus the Eritrean army plus the Amara militia, all put together, were not able to defeat. And then finally, the drones, the United Arab Emirates drones joined. Not only a drone from one country, drones from one country, from various countries. Mm-hmm. All this took part in the war. And you know what happened. Almost the Ethiopian army nearly was decimated. If they are going to make the same mistake again and say that we'll finish this war very soon, I think that will be the end for the country. So I hope they will not make the same mistake again. That war will not be simple now, because, as you said, preparation have taken place in both sides, and now the Tigrayans have real cause now, because they have been cut from the world for 2 years now. 2 years, mind you. Mm-hmm. They were not able to use the money they kept for problem days. They were not able to use the money they saved themselves, personally, individually. They were not able. They had no access to that, no access to electricity, any sort of power, no access to any communication. What does that mean? Just not politics, but from humanity point of view, what does that mean? We call our children, wives, how many times a day? But these people do not know about the whereabouts, whether their family are living or not for 2 years now. For 2 years, no refrigerator, no light, nothing, no TV,
no banks,
no radio, yeah. No banks. What does that mean? As a human being, this is a stone age. There is no part of the world except Tigray that is undergoing that kind of agony. No part of the world, I can say. No part of the world that does not have any communication at all. What does that mean from humanity point of view? If these people fight, they are already strangled. They are already suffocated. They are already under siege. What else can they do? What do you do if it happens to you and if it happens to me? I have to fight. No way. I think the government should not go wrong now. and it will be to the disadvantage of the government at the end of the day. Read my lips. These are certain. It will be certain.
Profoundly thank you, Becky, and we have a lot to discuss as a former colleague working together at Addis Ababa University. We have discussed on the education system of that nation and what's happening in reality. As you said, corruption, the drought and famine happening in Guji, Borno, Bali, Harar, everywhere in the entire nation and in Oromia in particular. I hope we'll have another chance to talk. And finally, if you have some final remark or remarks in a split of second, I'm going to give you a chance for that.
Well, I said too much. I sent all my messages across. Thank you very much, and I would be waiting for the next invitation for issues on education. That is mainly our profession, my and you.
Profoundly thank you again, Becky.
So
that's great. With this, we conclude our discussion. See you next time. Thank you, Wakala. This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are esteemed. Stay with us.